Nyan! Welcome back to my channel, everybody. Today's video is going to be about disabilities and BDSM. And one question I get asked a lot, or I hear, floating around, is if a person does have a disability, should they even partake in BDSM or kink activities? And my answer right away to that is, of course. I don't think it should impede anyone and stop them from doing what they really want to do. I think as long as that disability, as long as they can still follow, safe, sane, consensual, and I mean more part about being able to say that they consent to something, whether that be with sign language or, written down to say, I consent, this is what I want to do, then I think it's totally fine. So let's start there. Some of the milder disabilities are going to be, of course, easier to work around and aren't going to have as much plan and forethought that's going to need to be put into it. But first things first is, if you do have a disability and you are interested in BDSM, you probably already know by how you live your life and how your disability affects your current life. So that's going to kind of follow into, getting into BDSM or kink activities. And it's something that it might not be that hard for you, and then again, it may be very hard. I find that submissives tend to have a really hard time with, different types of submission due to certain disabilities. Let me find an example of something kind of small that might be able to be worked around. A really big illness that a lot of people have, and it affects a lot of people, is I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I think I am, called rheumatoid arthritis, and it's an inflammation in your bones in your body, and it can cause a lot of pain to do things like get down on your hands and knees or move certain ways. I'm not trying to say it's not bad, because rheumatoid arthritis is bad for people. I know it can feel really crippling and really painful, but it's not the same as in, let's say, someone being completely blind or completely deaf, or even both, or having, missing arms or legs. That's something that's really going to need extra thought and care. The first things first would be, whatever you do, if you're looking for a dominant, and when you find one, to make absolute sure they know everything about, your illness or the disability that you have that can really impede, your submission. And after letting them know that, I believe a good dominant, I don't think you would have to tell a good dominant this. I believe a good dominant would take it upon himself to learn about your disability and make sure that there are certain protocols in place so that you don't get hurt. So let's talk about, like rheumatoid arthritis or other disabilities that cause pain, because those are a little bit easier to deal with. It always depends on your dynamic. Being submissive, or even like a little girl, is going to be a lot easier on somebody with something like, rheumatoid arthritis or any other thing that causes pain in your body. For the fact of, slaves tend to, they are a lot more submissive and have to hold themselves to a higher standard. And also pets. People who are pet submissives tend to often be on the floor, crawl around a lot, which can really be painful for some people with, illnesses that cause pain and inflammation in their body. My answer to that would be, 1, how much does it mean to you? And can you still feel like you enjoy the dynamic if you can't do certain things because they're too painful? Like, do you feel like maybe you could just be a really good submissive, but it might not be such a good idea to completely devote yourself as a slave if you don't think you can handle it? those are things that I think need to be all taken into account. Now, beside physical disabilities, there are also mental disabilities. Things that, that you may have, whether it be chronic depression, bipolar disorder, any type of schizotypal or schizoid mental health issues, all those things can really affect, and I don't think a lot of people think about it, but something can be okay for one moment and then flip around and it just turn into a disaster. So that's why open communication with whoever your dominant or your topping partner is in a scene is something that needs to be just out and discussed before anything takes place, because that's how accidents happen. If nobody's ready or nobody's expecting something and then suddenly you collapse on the floor in agonizing pain and you're in so much pain you can't even give the safe word, that can be really shocking, not only for the person in pain but for the dominant who has no idea what's going on. So like I said, open communication, make sure the other person knows and takes it upon themselves to learn about what's wrong. As far as the pain things, I will start off, because a lot of people ask me, because I'm a pet submissive and I do spend a lot of time on the floor, how they can be on the floor too, because that's what they desire in that dynamic, is that submission of being below their masters or their owners, but it hurts their body too. One good remedy I have for this is either only crawl on floors that are nice and cushiony, like floors with carpet, real plush carpet. Don't crawl on obviously like vinyl or wood floors if they're gonna hurt you. Another thing is, and people may think this sounds silly, but if you're doing this long term, and I find a lot of people in puppy play that tend to really get into it, that do it long term, is to invest in elbow pads and knee pads, because those can help protect your joints when you're crawling around. Another good idea would be, before you're going to be on the floor frequently, take anti-inflammatory medicine or take any type of medicine that's going to help with pain. Like I said, anti-inflammatory obviously is going to help. But let's see, what else? Also, another good idea would be to, if you can't be on all fours on the floor, do something like where you sit on the floor but you stand up to walk around. And if all of it hurts too much or is too painful, but you kind of have one of two options. You can either decide, I can't do this and it's just too much for me, and if your dominant is a smart and caring dominant, he isn't going to force you to do something that is too painful for you to handle. So for that, I would say, there's the one of two options: is you let them know and you find other ways to submit that fulfill your needs, and I might sound like I'm coming out of a place of ignorance or arrogance about this, but find out what could be causing your issue. Rheumatoid arthritis does tend to be genetic, from what I know, because my mother has it, but a lot of people find that in changing their diet or certain lifestyle habits, that it can lessen their issues. A good example I have with me personally is I have a couple of autoimmune, diseases, and I used to get this really, really bad skin rash that would develop over my entire, chest and back, and it was awful. It hurt real bad, really painful, stingy. Obviously, getting smacked where I already had those stingy whelps were like, ooh, it wasn't good. So, ever since I changed my diet, I find that they pretty much went away and I don't have to deal with them that much anymore. So if it's something that you have that's impeding you that you think can be fixed through proper diet or medication, I think that is totally something to look into. Like I said, this is all kind of subjective, and the person who is suffering from these things should always talk to their healthcare provider and find out, what would be best for them to do. But yeah, so that's me gonna kind of push that aside, talking about those disabilities. I wanted to talk more also about mental disabilities. Mental disabilities can be very, very tricky because people affected by them and their psyche can be one way one minute and then another way the next. And knowledge is always the thing that helps somebody understand and be prepared for a situation. And I think that's especially true with someone with mental, well, and physical, but with especially severe mental disabilities. A good example of one would be what I have. I'm bipolar type 1, which means I suffer from, bipolar type 2, the mood swings aren't as quite as bad, and you can tend to kind of last, in one for a very short period of time. Bipolar type 1, you experience, both the depression and the mania, but you also experience hypermania and hyperdepression. And that means during hypermanic episodes, you do really, really stupid things that you wouldn't normally otherwise do. And then with obviously very crippling depression, you might do something that you otherwise wouldn't do. So that's a good example. For my answer for those kind of mental health issues would be to talk to your partner about being on some kind of medication. So there's some things that just can't be helped, and bipolar type 1 and type 2 are genetic mental disorders, and there's nothing that can be really done other than for it to be very carefully watched by yourself or your partner, and you take medication if you feel like you really need it. But other than that, I really think that nobody should be afraid or feel bad, especially submissives, if they feel like they can't submit because of, a health issue or disability that they might have. I think there are ways to work around everything. And if it's something that you really, truly desire, it's something you should be able to have. And I think the hardest part, honestly, of it all is not the disability. It's finding somebody that's willing to be there, a good dominant to help you and learn about it himself and take it upon himself to make sure that no matter what, nothing bad happens, at least while he's around, because he knows. And, well, I say he, but he or she, they know that they are able to take care of you because they took the time out of their life to educate themselves on, your problem. And that's why I don't think it completely, it obviously lies with the submissive in letting them know that something is wrong with them in the first place. But yeah, I really believe that the dominant should take it upon themselves to learn why,